This is the story of Marco and Juliana. Marco contacted us and wanted to share his story of how he and Juliana from the Philippines met. Marco was a 58-year-old man from New Jersey who had been divorced for just over a year, and he was lonely. Longing for a companion, he turned to online dating and developed an interest in Filipina women. However, it seemed really hard to find a woman who seemed honest and sincere. Marco was aware that there were Filipina women who were scammers. He wanted to be as careful as possible in his search for a good woman. Hoping for a fresh start and genuine connection, Marco took a month's leave from work and journeyed to the Philippines. His destination was Dumaguete, a city that seems safe to him with the familiarity of an expat community. In the heart of this city was a little coffee shop, where a pretty 25-year-old Filipina named Juliana worked. Juliana took Marco's order, and after Juliana served Marco his coffee, their eyes met, sparking an easy conversation between them. The coffee shop became Marco's daily destination. Every morning, he'd come in, order his usual, and share more stories with Juliana. With each passing day, their chats turned into dates with one another, as they explored the city together, with Juliana being his personal tour guide. They decided to go to Manila so they could meet Juliana's mother and see life in the big city. Juliana was born and raised in Manila. Manila was a great place to visit and they spent the remainder of their time together there. As the weeks went by, the bond between Marco and Juliana grew undeniable. They both fell in love. One day, while the two were walking along the waterfront at the Mall of Asia, Marco took a deep breath and asked her the question that he had been trying to ask for the past few days. Marco asked Juliana to marry him, and she agreed. Their plans unfolded rapidly after that night. Juliana agreed to move to the United States on the K-1 visa, and they would get married and live in New Jersey together. While the K-1 visa was in progress, Juliana would move back to Manila and stay with her mother until it was time to leave for the USA. Back in New Jersey, the first thing Marco did upon his return was hire an immigration attorney to handle the fiancé visa process for Juliana. While the forums and blogs online suggested that many people managed to file the paperwork themselves, Marco didn't want to take any chances. The stakes were high, and the last thing he wanted was an oversight that might delay or jeopardize their relationship. The attorney was on the case immediately, working closely with Juliana, who sent over the necessary documents from the Philippines. Filling out paperwork, ensuring all criteria were met, and constantly updating each other became part of their routine. The attorney set their expectations by mentioning that it would likely be a 6 to 7 month wait. I'd like to take a moment to ask you to please help us out by hitting the like button and subscribing to our channel for more of our videos. Liking and subscribing helps us grow so we can keep bringing you more stories and information on the Philippines and Asia, and I really appreciate all of your support. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Marco and Juliana had nightly video calls on WhatsApp to bridge the distance between them. They would discuss their day, and make plans for their future together. The wait was emotionally tough. The nightly video calls became filled with dreams of the life they would share together. Then, after 10 long months, the news they had been waiting for finally arrived. Their fiancé visa was approved. They were so happy, but another hurdle awaited them. Juliana had to travel to Manila for an interview at the U.S. Embassy. 2 more months of patience, paperwork, and stress was difficult to deal with, but there finally was light at the end of the tunnel. After what seemed like a lifetime, Juliana called Marco and was so happy. She had her medical exam at St. Luke's Hospital and then went to the embassy for her interview. Her visa was approved. Marco quickly booked her plane tickets. The moment they had both been waiting for was finally upon them. Juliana was coming to the USA. Have any of you guys out there had a bad experience with a foreign girlfriend or fiancé? Can you offer some advice for others who are watching this video? We'd really like to hear from you in the comments section. The crazy unbearable Newark Airport held a different kind of excitement for Marco on the day Juliana arrived. As passengers came off the plane, his heart was pounding. He finally spotted her, and they hugged and kissed each other like crazy. Marco took 2 weeks of vacation so he could introduce Juliana to her new home. They explored all of New Jersey. Marco proudly showed her around his town, telling Juliana stories about him growing up there. Juliana was the center of attention. Marco's family took her under their wing, welcoming her with open arms. Marco introduced Juliana to his next-door neighbors, Annie, and her brother, Charlie, and they welcomed her to the neighborhood. They promised to look after her during the day while Marco was working. The 2 weeks of vacation went by quickly. He returned to his daily grind, but they had a plan in place. Juliana would focus on settling in, getting familiar with their home, and preparing for their upcoming wedding. They decided to get married in New York City. After the wedding, they would go on a honeymoon. They would first stop in Washington, D.C., and Marco would show her the White House and all the other historical parts of the city. Eventually, they would arrive in Fort Lauderdale, Florida and stay in a condo near the beach. Every night they'd sit together, finalizing plans, and dreaming of the future. Immediately after their marriage, Marco planned to teach Juliana how to drive and he would help her find a job. After a couple of weeks, things started to change. Sometimes when Marco called, Juliana wouldn't answer the phone. She would return the call an hour or two later. She sounded strange on the phone. She would say that she was sleeping. Marco was concerned, but he figured she was still getting adjusted to the time change. One particular afternoon, Marco's worst fears came to life. No matter how many times he called Juliana, there was no answer, and she didn't call back. He was afraid that something happened to her. Marco immediately left work, and raced home to see what was going on. The sight that met him was his worst nightmare. Her clothes, personal items, everything was gone, as if she had never been there. Marco remembered the elderly lady who lived across the street who always had an eye on the neighborhood's comings and goings. Marco knocked on her door and asked if she saw anything going on at his home earlier in the day. She said that she saw Juliana hurriedly loading her stuff into Marco's next-door neighbor's car. Charlie, Marco's next-door neighbor, would visit Marco and Juliana with his sister every once in a while on the weekends. They would come over for drinks for an hour or two, and the realization that Juliana might have been involved with him was a total shock. Confused and hurt, Marco approached Charlie's home, where he was met by Charlie's sister, Annie. According to her, Charlie had moved out unexpectedly, and she had no idea that they were having an affair. She didn't see them loading up Charlie's car with Juliana's belongings earlier in the day. Marco was super depressed. The woman he had brought from halfway around the world, with dreams of love and a shared future, had run off with his next-door neighbor. He could not believe this was happening to him. Marco kept checking in with Charlie's sister. She said Charlie had stopped calling her and she had no idea where he was or what he was doing. When he left, he said he found a job in California and was moving in with his friend. Marco had no plans to go look for them because he knew it would be a waste of his time. He wrote a letter to the Department of Homeland Security and reported her for violating the terms of her visa, and he let them know that she scammed him and abandoned him. It's been a little over a year now, and to this day, he does not know if they are still together, or if Juliana went back to the Philippines. Meeting a Filipina woman in person usually is much better than meeting online, but in this case, it didn't work out. And rushing into marriage is not a good idea. Some women can hide their true intentions and you just don't know what's going on in their heads. Even a woman from your home country can mask her true intentions, leading to a heartbreaking end in the relationship. I would like to thank Marco for sharing his story with us. He wanted everyone to know about his experience so other men can look for red flags in their relationship and avoid the terrible heartache and financial loss that can happen with international relationships. I hope you enjoyed this video and I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button. It really helps promote this channel so other people can find us. Also, please subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you can be alerted when our next video is released. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing all of you again soon.